The stars hung motionless over the rim of the galaxy, cold and indifferent. Within the black, a formation of Imperial ships drifted forward in absolute confidence, their hulls gleaming obsidian under the pulse of a nearby red dwarf. The lead cruiser, Ascendant Flame, bore the insignia of the Galactic Empire's High Outreach Division, a golden serpent consuming a world. Inside the command chamber, Admiral Karadvar leaned back in the velvet throne-like chair, a smirk playing across his features. A dozen alien species stood at consoles beneath him, each modified to better serve the hierarchical needs of their humanless empire. For all their technological prowess, none had seen fit to treat this newest encounter with anything more than procedural annoyance. "Primitive world," muttered Var, tapping through the digital dossier. "Earth. Pre-warp. Small military. Localized politics. Unaligned. Perfect for annexation." A communications officer, a three-armed Thraki named Vis, turned and blinked its lower eyes nervously. "Intercepted a transmission, Admiral. Not from Earth's official channels. It's a warning." Kareth raised a brow. "A warning? From a dirtball species that just discovered orbital flight." "Yes, sir. Audio only. No encryption. Playing it now." A moment of silence. Then a human voice crackled to the chamber, male, calm, and utterly unshaken. "If your troops land, they will not return. This is your only chance to turn back." Kareth barked a laugh that echoed through the metal hall. "Is that meant to be intimidating?" The bridge officers chuckled in kind, but Vis said nothing. Across the vast emptiness of space, Mars loomed like a wounded eye, its dust-red surface pockmarked by ancient scars. On its closest moon, Phobos, embedded within a steep crater rim, lay a camouflaged outpost no wider than a cargo container. To most sensors, it was a lifeless rock. But within, the temperature was stable, the air recycled, and every surface covered in matte black mesh that drank up light. He sat motionless in the dark. His name had long since been classified. To most, he was known only as Rook. No insignia marked his suit. No rank adorned his shoulder. The rifle beside him was an angular monolith of darkened carbon alloys and magnetic coils, cradled like a living thing. Rook's breathing was slow, measured. He stared through his visor's scope-linked HUD, watching the Imperial fleet as it organized in low orbit above Mars. Their formation was tight, efficient, even admirable. The Empire's reputation for discipline was not exaggerated, but they were predictable. He whispered, "Pattern Epsilon 2, flank drift to the left in 20 seconds." The predictive algorithm confirmed his assumption in green text along the corner of his vision. Rook didn't smile. He rarely did. But there was a certain satisfaction in knowing them better than they knew themselves. His orders had been simple. Do not engage unless planetary defense fails. Observe, record, and, if the line is crossed, eliminate command units with prejudice. A soft chime sounded, a fleet-wide broadcast being sent aside. He patched in. Kareth Var's voice flooded through, sharp and pompous. "To the governments of Earth, surrender all planetary authority to the Galactic Empire. Resistance will result in the swift application of force. You have 10 of your standard hours to comply." It was never a request, always a decree. Rook's finger hovered near the comm switch. He considered protocol. Then he pressed it. "Fleet Commander, I don't know your name, and it doesn't matter. I'll give you one warning, because I don't enjoy killing the blind. Withdraw your troops. Your men won't see the second shot." He cut the line. 10 seconds passed. Then the laughter began. Rook shifted slightly and checked his sight lines. The terrain of Phobos, jagged and asymmetrical, offered no true cover. It didn't need to. His camouflage absorbed thermal signatures and visual spectrums alike. His position, calculated to millimeter, would not be found by accident. Down in the war room of Ascendant Flame, Kareth Var shook his head with amusement. "Tell the landing parties to proceed. Let's show our new friend what civilization looks like." Within minutes, 20 drop pods streaked through the Martian sky, leaving contrails of blue fire. They slammed into the crust with a coordinated impact, unfolding like metallic flowers into mobile deployment centers. Columns of Imperial shock troops emerged in perfect synchronization, tall, silver-armored beings bred for speed and obedience. Each carried a standard-issue plasma rifle and wore helmets shaped like the heads of predatory birds. They fanned out wordlessly. Drones launched into the sky, scanning for resistance. There was none, only wind, dust, and silence. And far above them, Rook exhaled slowly. He didn't need to aim yet. He only needed to wait. The Empire had made its move. Now it was his turn. Somewhere deep within Earth's defense network, a silent alert flashed red. Engagement Protocol Rook 1 authorized. The shot hadn't been fired, but the war had already begun. And on a cold moon that no one had bothered to name on their star maps, a human waited in perfect stillness, watching. Dust boiled around the impact craters as the Empire's drop pods split open with hydraulic hiss and unfolding steel. Soldiers emerged in silence, their movements synchronous, unthinking. Each wore gleaming battleplate etched with Imperial sigils, the armor shaped to intimidate, sleek, faceless, inhuman. The Martian atmosphere shimmered faintly in the heat of their arrival, but not one of them hesitated. Orders had been given. Resistance was expected to be negligible. At the center of the formation strode Commander Eric's Tau, bred on Halvrith, where gravity crushed lesser species into paste. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, reinforced bones crackling faintly beneath the weight of his armor. A tactician by design, Eric's had conquered 5 frontier systems without a single strategic error. This would be no different. "Fan out," he ordered, voice modulated through his helm. Triad sweep. Leave no local tech untouched. Drones zipped overhead, scanning the crimson wastes. Readings returned sterile. No biosigns, no energy signatures beyond those of the landing forces. The terrain rolled in lifeless dunes and broken stone. Yet Eric's felt it, a wrongness and stillness, something waiting in the corners of their perception. He turned his head slightly, raising his gauntlet. Deploy signal jammers. Someone's watching. Over 100 kilometers above, Rook lay prone in the angled shadow of a jagged rock spire. His rifle scope displayed the landing site in perfect detail. Troop count, unit designation, heat dispersal patterns, and structural vulnerabilities. The rifle's barrel extended silently, folding into position with the slow grace of a predator stretching before a kill. He had seen soldiers before, hundreds of them, but not like this. These were not explorers or diplomats. They were enforcers, designed to erase anything that resisted. Rook's heart did not race. His breath did not quicken. Stillness was survival. Precision was doctrine. He tagged Eric's Tau first. Commander, highest command unit. Priority target. Location, grid 32C. Distance, 15.8 kilometers. Wind, negligible. Atmospheric distortion, minimal. The reticle aligned. Command unit locked, whispered the targeting AI. Rook's finger rested lightly on the trigger pad. He had watched Eric's long enough. Movement patterns cataloged. Breathing rate analyzed. Armor thickness measured. The man had a habit of pausing slightly before issuing a second-tier command. That pause, that breath, would be his end. Down below, Eric's raised his arm again. Deploy Metch to the secondary plateau. I want. A thunderclap split the thin air. Eric's helm crumpled inward, a blossom of compressed metal and plasma. His body twitched once, then dropped like a puppet whose strings had been severed. Silence followed. Soldiers froze in place, heads snapping toward their fallen commander. For a full 2 seconds, no one moved. Then panic set in. "Sniper!" Someone shouted, ducking behind a rock formation. Another soldier turned to fire at nothing. Plasma bolts ripping into the air. Rook did not move. He watched, calculated. The AI projected confusion vectors. Unit cohesion plummeted. Chain of command fractured. Time to secondary shot, 3.2 seconds. He shifted his aim minutely. Second target, communications officer. Identified by signal modulator unit. Location, grid 33B. Fired. Another spark. Another body dropped. He shifted again. Shot. Shift. Shot. For dead in 6 seconds. No return fire hit within a kilometer of his perch. The troops scattered. Some formed defensive lines. Others fled blindly across the plateau. A few tried to launch recon drones, but they were too slow. Rook tagged and eliminated each unit before it left the ground. Inside Ascendant Flame, alarm screamed. Tactical officers scrambled to decode what had just happened. Admiral Var watched the screens with disbelief. The clean formation now a chaos of blinking red alerts and disintegrating squads. "What in the void is hitting them?" he snapped. "Unknown, Admiral," Vis replied, all 6 eyes wide with fear. "No sensor lock. No trajectory trace. It's as if the shots are coming from nowhere." "Then burn the surface. Glass it. The sniper is too close to our own troops." "Then pull them back." Var bellowed. The order was sent. It never reached most of the soldiers. Rook switched to suppression mode. Micro-fletchets loaded. He swept a firing line across the closest squad attempting retreat, shattering armor joints and helmets. Some fell instantly. Others crawled through dust, bleeding from between plates never designed to be pierced. He paused only long enough to reload. There was no time for guilt, no room for reflection. This was what he had trained for, what Earth had designed him to be. Not a warrior, but a deterrent. A single mind engineered to prevent wars by being too costly to challenge. The AI spoke again. 73% of ground force eliminated. Command network inoperable. He clicked off the safety. "Confirmed sweep," Rook said. "Confirmed. Last confirmed target. Mech pilot preparing launch. Grid 36D. He steadied the scope, focusing on the thick shell of the emerging assault mech. Just before the canopy sealed, he fired. The pilot slumped forward, blood smearing the inside of the viewplate. The mech twitched, then stilled. For a brief moment, the battlefield fell quiet. No movement, no sound beyond the faint whine of dying electronics. The Martian wind began to return, carrying with it the acrid tang of scorched metal and carbonized flesh. Above, in the Ascendant Flame, no one spoke. Even Var was silent, jaw tight, eyes flicking across the kill feed like a man witnessing a prophecy fulfilled. His empire, to use of dominance, had just tasted precision wrath. On Phobos, Rook watched the retreat begin. Small evacuation shuttles launched from the furthest ridge, streaking skyward in erratic, panic vectors. He could have taken them down, but he didn't. His job was deterrence, not genocide. Let them run. Let them remember. He slung his rifle across his back, rising with the soundless ease of someone trained to leave no trace. The engagement was over. The message had been sent. And deep within the ship, still reeling from the cost of arrogance, Var finally muttered, almost to himself, "Who are these people?" Rook walked into the shadow of the rocks without looking back. The last shuttle hadn't cleared Martian airspace before Rook shifted positions. He moved like a shade across the fractured terrain of Phobos, one gloved hand pressing the rock as he scaled a narrow ridge. Dust clung to his armor in muted streaks, but his presence remained invisible to every sensor combing the region. He knew the Empire would react, not with logic or humility, but fury. Their doctrine didn't account for failure at the hands of a single operator, and he was never foolish enough to believe they'd retreat without testing him further. From his new vantage point, he stared up into the ink-black sky. The Ascendant Flame lingered in orbit, flanked by 2 escort ships repositioning along a polar trajectory. Something was coming. Rook's AI interface blinked to life, feeding real-time analysis into his HUD. Energy spike detected. Vessel deployment in progress. Estimated payload. Anti-personnel strike units. Orbital drop trajectory confirmed. He steadied his breath, lowering to one knee. Time to impact. 72 seconds. A ripple of electromagnetic interference disrupted the air as twin lances of light shot downward from orbit. At first glance, they looked like meteors, brilliant, focused, impossible to track. But Rook knew better. Orbital deployment strikers. Enhanced Empire troopers, cybernetically linked, outfitted with reactive armor and precision boosters. Each one cost more than a Terran gunship. The Empire had just escalated. He watched the fire trails punch through thin atmosphere and slam into the plateau below with controlled violence. Explosive petals of forest scattered red sand and shattered stone. The dust hadn't even settled before they moved. 6 in total, each over 2 meters tall, frames reinforced with living metal that adjusted in real time to ballistic threats. Rook slid back behind cover, heart rate climbing 1 tick above baseline. Not fear calculation. These weren't infantry. They were hunters. And unlike the earlier wave, they might actually prove a challenge. The lead unit's voice barked through encrypted frequencies. Unknown hostile. You have demonstrated unacceptable resistance. Stand down or be dismantled. He said nothing. Not to them. To his rifle. Override delta lock. Switch to high penetration burst. Confirmed. The weapon adjusted with a mechanical click. A fresh cartridge slid into place, glowing faintly blue with magnetic stabilization. He leaned out just enough to catch their formation. The 6 had formed a pentagonal spread, with the central unit acting as coordinator. They weren't scanning blindly like the grunts. They were calculating probabilities, tracking anomalies in gravity, light, even sound delay. He had minutes at best before they triangulated his nest. So he moved first. His first shot wasn't meant to kill. It struck the left flank unit at an angle, piercing a joint seam and detonating inside the exoframe. The explosion tore off the soldier's left arm and sent it spinning into the dust. The rest of the unit pivoted instantly, suppressing fire, tracing his last known position with terrifying precision. But Rook had already shifted. By the time they lit up the ridge, he was crawling beneath a crevice 30 meters downslope, his rifle magnetically adhering to his back. The Empire had made one fatal assumption, that he was like them, stationary, dependent on cover. They didn't understand that he was a terrain. He emerged from the crack in the rock with a rolling pivot, snapping the rifle forward. 2 more shots. One shattered the command unit's targeting array. The second punched a hole straight through the secondary trooper's neural relay. The bodies dropped hard. Metal met stone with a hollow clang. 4 remained. They converged. One launched skyward, using short-burst thrusters to try and flank from above. Rook anticipated it, waiting until the unit crested the ridge before firing through its vent array. The projectile sliced the boosters open mid-ignition. The fall wasn't graceful. The remaining 3 began suppressive coverage, trying to box him into a corner. Heat signatures were erratic now, weapon fire scorching the land in arcs of blue plasma. Explosions ripped through outcrops and shattered craters. Rook ducked, slid, crawled, never where they expected. Still, a warning pinged in his HUD. Microfracture detected on his shoulder plating. 1 near miss, 2 close. He pivoted behind a blackened stone arch, checking ammunition. 4 rounds. That would have to be enough. He took a long breath. His voice was flat, emotionless. Initiate Phantom Vector. The AI hesitated. Are you certain? Yes. The rifle transformed in his hands, its rear casing splitting open to expose a micro-drone bay. For autonomous ballistic units, each keyed to his neural pattern. As he fired them upward, they arced and looped, invisible to standard tracking, feeding him line-of-sight perspectives from 3 new angles. Now, he had the high ground. From 3 directions, he fired in perfect sync. 3 shots, 3 kills. The final trooper managed to raise its weapon, but only for a second. A clean shot to the throat joint ended it, sending sparks into the dusk-red wind. Silence returned. Rook exhaled, body relaxing by degrees. The plateau below was a graveyard of twisted metal and fractured pride. The elite had lasted less than 60 seconds. Above, the orbiting warship shifted nervously. A new signal began to transmit from the ascendant flame, but Rook ignored it. His AI spoke instead. Combat effectiveness, 100%. All targets neutralized, awaiting further instructions. He stared at the wreckage, at the scorched craters and broken machines. Not one of them had touched him. Let them speak, he said at last. A moment later, the communication line opened. No threats this time. Only a single voice, tight, measured, uncertain. This is Admiral Var of the Galactic Empire. We acknowledge your capabilities. We request negotiation. Rook paused, then Slowly, he raised his rifle, pointed it skyward, and fired a single shot that exploded harmless in the vacuum above, a final message written in recoil. Earth doesn't negotiate from the ground. And with that, he vanished once more into the rocks. The ascendant flame loomed in Mars' orbit like a wounded predator, its gleaming hull marred by heat scoring and electromagnetic burns invisible to the naked eye but damning on every internal readout. Within its cold, silent halls, lights dimmed to conserve power. Entire decks had been locked down, not from damage, but shame. Protocol dictated discretion when pride had been so thoroughly dismantled. Admiral Var stood on the main observation platform, arms clasped behind his back, jaw clenched so tight it ached. He hadn't slept in 2 cycles. Every display still cycled through telemetry that refused to make sense. A single operative, human, unauthorized, without fleet or support, had crippled a full planetary operation. No honor in the confrontation. No warning. Just methodical, surgical elimination. This cannot be allowed to stand, he muttered to himself. Behind him, Vis approached with uncharacteristic hesitation. The officer's 6 limbs remained tight to its thorax, a posture of submission that no one aboard had ever seen from it before. Admiral, Strategic Command has sent preliminary orders. Speak. They are ambiguous. The incident has triggered full reevaluation of Sol-class threat protocols. Earth status has been elevated to Autonomous Military Zone Tier Alpha. Var slowly turned. They've assigned us Tier Alpha for one man. Vis's voice barely rose above a whisper. Not one man, Admiral. One deterrent. They believe there may be others. There was silence. Then Var snarled and turned back to the viewport. They're ghosts. The human governments. Their defenses are relics. Their fleets are obsolete, but they build things like that. No answer came. Far below, on the lifeless skin of Phobos, Rook sat in a crouch beneath the overhang of a crumbling basalt ridge, scanning the blackened curve of Mars's horizon. His armor was stripped of identifiers, just matte gray composite and carbon weave. His breath was slow, each inhale deliberate. After the orbital strike squad, there had been nothing. No more drops, no more probes, just silence and distant retreat. His mission for now was complete, but Rook knew silence was never peace. Silence was a pause between tests, between invasions, between mistakes. A faint signal blinked on his HUD. A lander, lightweight, fast, coded with diplomatic sublayer frequencies. No threat profile. He didn't raise his rifle. The vessel touched down half a kilometer away with barely a ripple of dust. Its hull shimmered under reactive shielding, and when the ramp hissed open, a single figure emerged. She wore the black and blue trim of Earth intelligence, camouflaged under a reactive cloak. Slender, sharp-eyed, composed. Liaison Varencho. He stood as she approached, motion smooth, controlled. Neither reached for weapons. They had met before, long ago, under different skies. Operator Rook, she said, stopping a few paces away. I assume the field is secure. He gave a slow nod. No signals in 3 days. No survivors in 10 clicks. The fleet has withdrawn. They'll come back, she said, glancing at the ridgeline. But next time they'll ask questions first. She held up a small black object, a data capsule no larger than her palm. It pulsed faintly with an encrypted glow. High Command authorized a full leak, she continued. Telemetry, targeting data, combat footage, audio. Everything you did here. We're sending it across the galactic relays. Rook's visor angled slightly. Propaganda? Proof, Joe corrected. A deterrent that won't stay secret. We need everyone watching to understand what happens when you step into Sol without permission. He took the capsule, studying it in silence. Let them know Earth doesn't build monuments, he said finally. We build warnings. Cho smiled faintly. You just became one. She stepped forward, her voice lowering. And one more thing, this data packet. High Command left it to your discretion. You can name yourself, or not. His fingers closed around the capsule. His voice was distant, calm. No name. Let them fear the silence between shots. Cho nodded. As you wish. One last thing. Command isn't recalling you. You're to remain on station. Eyes open. Next wave might not be Imperial. Could be something else. He looked back toward the stars. I never expect to be recalled. Cho lingered a moment longer, then turned and disappeared into the dusk, her footsteps vanishing with the wind. The lander lifted silently behind her, vanishing into the void. Rook returned to his perch. In the weeks that followed, the story spread like plasma through dry air. In Imperial sectors, whispers replaced orders. Footage of impossibly precise kills circulated in shadow networks. Independent mercenaries rewound the footage for patterns they could never match. Some denied the story. Others added to it, calling the sniper a myth, a weapon of war, a ghost born from Soul's forbidden past. But those who had seen the wreckage didn't argue. The Empire, for the first time in over a century, halted expansion in a sector not due to treaties or resistance fleets, but fear. Fear of the silence. Fear of the man who had warned them once, then answered with a trigger pull. Back on Phobos, as the dust wind shifted and shadows danced over broken craters, Rook activated a long-range acoustic beacon. Not a distress call. A message. Short, clear, non-negotiable. To any fleet approaching Seoul without invitation, you had your warning. The next will not be a message. Then silence, and from the void that silence echoed.